Have you ever felt stuck between being the nice landlord and actually getting paid on time? On one hand, you don't want to turn into that cold, heartless landlord everyone hates. On the other hand, late rent kills your cash flow, stresses you out, and can spiral into evictions and vacancy. In this video, you're going to learn how to dramatically cut late rent in your multifamily property without being a jerk. We're going to cover three big things: how to set expectations so most tenants pay on time by default, what system to use when someone is late so you're firm but fair, and how to build a culture in your building where paying on time is just normal. Let's get into it. Let's start with a simple truth. Late rent is usually not about one bad tenant. It's usually about a system problem. If your policy is fuzzy, if your communication is inconsistent, or if you make constant exceptions, your tenants will learn that due dates don't really matter. The message becomes, this landlord is flexible. Nothing really happens if I'm late. So instead of trying to fix late rent by getting tougher and more aggressive, start by cleaning up your process. The goal is to be clear, predictable, and professional. Imagine you pick up a 12-unit building. On paper, it looks great. Stable rents, decent tenants. But every single month, 4 or 5 tenants are paying late. One pays on the 10th because that's when I get paid. Another is always sending partial payments, promising the rest in a week. Another disappears for a few days and then finally drops a money order with no communication. From the outside, it might look like everything's okay because everyone eventually pays. But as the owner, you're logging into your bank account every morning, hoping more rent has come in. You're juggling your own mortgage, utilities, and maintenance bills, not sure exactly how much cash you'll have. You're spending mental energy chasing people, sending reminders, and debating whether to be strict or understanding. You tell yourself, I'm being nice. I'm giving people a chance. But what's really happening is this: you don't have a system. Then one month, 2 of those chronic late payers just stop paying. Now you're filing notices, paying legal fees, and sitting on empty units that still need turns. That's usually the moment landlords realize, I don't have a tenant problem, I have a process problem. From here on, that's what we're going to fix. Step 1 is setting crystal clear expectations before someone ever moves in. Most landlords only mention the due date and maybe the late fee. That's not enough. You want every new tenant to understand 4 things very clearly: the due date, the grace period, if you have one, exactly what happens if rent is late, and how you prefer to be communicated with if they're going to have a problem. This should be in writing, in the lease, and also explained in simple language when they sign. For example, you might say, rent is due on the 1st. We allow a grace period through the 5th. On the 6th, a late fee of X dollars is automatically applied. If you know you're going to have an issue in a particular month, tell us before the due date so we can figure something out. We can't waive late fees after the fact, but we are open to short-term payment plans if you communicate early. The tone here is key. You're not threatening them. You're just calmly explaining how things work. When people know the rules ahead of time, it feels less personal when those rules are enforced. You're not being mean later. You're just doing what you said you would do on day 1. Step 2 is making it easy to pay on time. A lot of late payments are actually friction issues, not attitude issues. Think about the difference between these 2 experiences. In one scenario, a tenant has to remember the due date, write a check, find an envelope, buy a stamp, and physically mail or drop it off. There's no reminder, no link, nothing. It's easy to push it off until tomorrow. In the better scenario, a tenant gets a friendly reminder before the due date with a link. They've already set up an online portal. They can pay from their phone in under 60 seconds, or they have auto pay turned on and just see the confirmation. Which tenant is more likely to pay on time? It's the one with less friction. Ask yourself, do I offer online payments? Can tenants set up automatic payments? Do they get reminders before the due date? And are there clear instructions on how to pay, in their language? If you're still doing only checks and money orders, you're making on-time payment harder than it needs to be. If you want to stop late rent without being a jerk, remove as much friction as possible. Encourage or require online payments. Send automated reminders 3 days before rent is due, on the due date, and the day after if unpaid. Keep the tone neutral and professional, not emotional. Something as simple as friendly reminder. Rent of $X is due on the 1st. You can pay online at this link. Please reach out before the due date if you anticipate any issues. You're being proactive, not aggressive. Step 3 is having a standard response when someone is late. This is where most landlords swing between two extremes. Either they're overly aggressive and damage the relationship, or they're overly flexible and train tenants to pay late. You want a middle path. Firm, consistent, and respectful. On the first business day after rent is late, send a calm notice. Hi Nancy, our records show your rent for this month has not been received. Please make payment today to avoid additional fees. If you're facing a temporary issue, contact us immediately so we can discuss options. If there's no response, move to the next step your local laws require. That might be a pay or quit notice or whatever is standard in your area. You send it on time, every time, and keep your communication polite and factual. The key is this: you follow the same steps every time, no matter who the tenant is. You are not arguing. You are not getting emotional. You're simply following your stated process. That consistency lets you stay human in your interactions, because you're not winging it case by case. You can say, this is just our standard process. It's the same for everyone. Step 4 is how you handle temporary hardship without opening the door to endless excuses. You can be compassionate and still protect your business. There's a big difference between someone who hits a genuine one-time bump and someone who is always in crisis. When someone reaches out early and says, I'm going to be a little short this month, you can use a simple rule. You'll consider a written payment plan if they have a good history, they reach out before the due date, and the plan brings them fully current within a short, defined period. That might look like, okay, here's what we can do. Half by the 5th, the other half by the 20th. We'll put this in writing. Late fees still apply as stated in the lease, but as long as you follow this plan, we won't move forward with further action. You're being kind, but you're also being clear. There's a plan, a deadline, and consequences if the plan isn't followed. Good tenants with real, temporary issues are usually relieved. They feel respected and they follow through. Chronic late payers, on the other hand, don't like clear boundaries. When you say, this is the plan, these are the dates, they either step up or reveal that they're not going to. The important part is, this is the exception, not the default. You don't want every tenant thinking they can just make a plan every month. Decide your own guardrails, like no more than one payment plan per tenant in a 12-month period, and the plan must bring them current within 30 days. Whatever your rule is, write it down and follow it. Step 5 is managing your own emotions and language. Landlording gets emotional fast, especially when you have your own mortgage, your own bills, and your own stress. But the moment you start communicating from anger or frustration, you make everything harder. Your goal is to sound like a professional property manager, not a stressed out owner. That means no name calling, no guilt tripping, and no long emotional messages. Keep it short, factual, and calm. The rent is late. The late fee is X. This notice is required by our policy and by law. These are your options. This keeps you from burning bridges with decent tenants going through a rough patch and strengthens your position if you ever do need to court, because your documentation is clean and professional. A good rule of thumb: if you're too mad to say it calmly, don't send it yet. Write the message, save it, and come back once you've cooled down. Step 6 is designing your screening process to reduce chronic late payers before they ever move in. The best way to avoid late rent drama is to be picky on the front end. Look closely at income relative to rent, history of evictions or collections, payment patterns from prior landlords, and stability of employment. Ask previous landlords directly. Did this tenant pay on time, most of the time? And would you rent to them again? Those 2 questions alone tell you a lot. Sometimes people are late because life hit them once. Sometimes people are late because they're always late. You're not judging their worth as a person. You're making a business decision about risk. By strengthening screening, you make it much easier to be kind and relaxed with the tenants you do approve, because you already filtered out the serial late payers. And when good tenants see that you're serious about who you let in, they feel safer. Step 7 is building a pay-on-time culture in your building. If everyone knows the rules, sees that they're enforced consistently, and notices that chronic late paying is not tolerated, People adjust. You can even positively reinforce on-time payment with a quick thank you message a couple times a year. Appreciate you always paying on time. It really helps us keep the property running smoothly. Over time, the building's norm becomes, we pay on time here. That's just how it works. Tenants who like stability and predictability stay. Tenants who don't like boundaries eventually move on. So, stopping late rent in multifamily without being a jerk comes down to clear expectations up front, easy, low-friction ways to pay, a consistent written process when payments are late, compassion that is structured and time-limited, professional, non-emotional communication, better screening before move-in, and a building culture where paying on time is simply normal. You don't need to yell. You don't need to threaten. You just need a system that you follow calmly and consistently. If this was helpful and you want more practical strategies for running multifamily like a real business, hit like so more landlords see this. In the comments, tell me this. If you had to fix just one thing in your collections process this month, what would it be? Subscribe if you're serious about building multifamily cash flow without losing sleep over late rent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.